Hey, how's it going, everybody? John here with City Park Rangers, and today we're going to take a break from looking at theme parks and we're going to focus in on a film that I personally think is changing the way that Hollywood is approaching films today, and I think it's worth talking about. But before we get going, if you like content like this and you want to see more of it, hit that like button. It helps out a ton, more than you realize, I promise you. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing as well so you don't miss any videos that we put out. We appreciate it. Okay, so what even is this movie? The movie's called The Creator, and it came out on technically September 29th, but some friends and I actually got to go see it on the 28th of September. The film's written and directed by Gareth Edwards, and if you aren't familiar with his work, he actually directed the 2014 Godzilla movie and also Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. I think both of those films actually give us, the audience, a great window into Edward's mind in terms of just his visual storytelling and how tactile he is with it. The 2014 Godzilla movie is one of those that really surprised me even back in the day. I was only 18 when the movie came out, and I can remember even now going to see that film back in the day. I expected very little from it, if that makes sense. I really didn't think that it was going to be anything spectacular. I had seen Godzilla 2000, I had seen a lot of the old Japanese Godzilla movies with the minis and that sort of thing, which is all really cool in its own right. However, I think I had this skewed perspective on what this 2014 Godzilla movie would be. Back then, the new Avengers movie, Avengers Age of Ultron, was about to release, and I knew that Quicksilver was going to be in it, Aaron Taylor Johnson. I had also seen some other work of his, and I really enjoyed it all. I thought that it was really solid stuff. I enjoyed him as an actor, and I was like, you know what, let's see what this movie's about. I remember Bryan Cranston was in it briefly as well, and I was just like, this is an interesting take on character, or really a franchise that we haven't seen done in a grounded way just yet. I'll never forget in the theater watching the soldiers drop from those helicopters for the first time, and all the smoke is there. It's all red. The skyline's red. You have the scale, the sheer magnitude of Godzilla represented there in a way that I don't think has actually been replicated since then. You feel the size of that freaking gigantic lizard. You know what I'm saying? As those soldiers are dropping, it's blowing your mind. It really, really is. And then, of course, Rogue One is bar none the best Star Wars movie that Disney has put out since they've owned it. I don't think that's even really a hot take. I think almost everyone would agree with that. I have my personal feelings on Rogue One, just in terms of the story itself. Does it actually matter? All those sorts of things. And I know that there are plenty of people that like Andor and yada, yada, yada. I'm taking a break right now from Ahsoka talk just because it got to a place where I thought it would be more beneficial for me to just review the show as a whole versus reviewing it episode by episode. So expect a video next week on the Ahsoka finale. But I digress. Back to Rogue One for a second. What Rogue One did super well is it introduced us to a cast of characters that we had not met before, which was really cool to see in Star Wars. That had not really happened yet. I know that we had, I think at that time, we'd already had episode 7. So yes, we got characters that we hadn't met yet in that respect with Rey and Finn and Poe and whatever. But this was still different in that they were not necessarily attached to the Skywalkers in any way. And I think that people were really longing for that freshness. Not only that, it was the first Star Wars film that didn't rely on Jedi or Sith. It really just relied on the Rebels and the Empire and the feud between the two, and a mission that is kind of briefly mentioned in Star Wars canon, and you're getting to see the fulfillment of it, which is pretty interesting. It's a neat concept, for sure. The movie itself, for me, as grounded and cool as it was, I appreciated all the aspects of it. I thought that the characters were interesting, all those sorts of things. Easily, the coolest part of that entire thing was seeing the return of Darth Vader in live action, going down that hallway, annihilating rebel soldiers. The coolest freaking thing that anyone had seen of Darth Vader up to that point, because yes, the original trilogy, Darth Vader is a presence. He is a menace to be dealt with, and Luke, you feel that anytime that he's facing Luke or when he's facing Obi-Wan, whatever, you really do get the gravity of that. However, it's very stiff in terms of the saber combat and all those sorts of things. In this hallway scene, dude, just freaking, let's just watch it. How about that? Let's just watch it for a second. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It's so good. It's so good. I mention all of that just to iterate. That's who Edwards is as a storyteller and director. This guy knows what he's doing. And I think that Hollywood knows that and afforded him the ability to create something original in The Creator. And I really think that The Creator is actually his breakout film, just in terms of establishing himself as a director to be reckoned with in Hollywood that really knows what they're doing, that really knows storytelling, crafting a solid narrative that people can enjoy and follow and be engaged with along the way. The Creator has all of that, man. It has all of that and then some. Truly, it really does. It's so freaking good. I don't want to get into spoilers. I'm going to avoid spoilers the entire time that I talk about this film because I really want people to go and watch it. However many of you end up seeing this video, doesn't matter. Watch this movie. If it's still in theaters by the time you're watching this video, go see it on the biggest screen that you possibly can. And I mean that. Go watch it big if you can. All right, I'm going to look away from the camera for a second to read you guys the log line of The Creator. All right, here we go. Against a backdrop of a war between humans and robots with artificial intelligence, a former soldier finds the secret weapon, a robot in the form of a young child. That's all you need to go and watch this movie and enjoy it. So let's start with the talent of this movie. John David Washington is our main protagonist, and man, is he good in this movie. He's good in everything. Let's just be honest. I don't think that he's been in any movie that I've seen with him in it that I haven't enjoyed. Not true. As I just said that, I remembered I hate Tenet. And I can get into that in another video if you guys want me to explain why, but I really don't like that film. But outside of Tenet, I really enjoy John David Washington and his acting and all of that sort of stuff. And even in the movie, he's not the problem that I have with that film. He's really good in it, actually. All the actors are. But far and away, the standout of this movie is Madeline Una Voiles. Or if I'm saying her name wrong, I apologize. It could be Madeline. She is captivating. In every sequence that she's in, she demands that you engage with her, that you think about what she's thinking about, that you marinate in the world that she's being subjected to. She conveys emotion better than any child actor I've ever seen, I think. And I'm not just saying that. There are plenty of good child actors. I was explaining it to a friend out after the movie in this way. There are good child actors. Jurassic Park, for example, had good child actors. But I recall an interview with Spielberg stating that he was looking for kids that could scream really good. And boy, did he find them. Sometimes with kids in movies, you have to look at stuff like that. And you have to look at, especially with like a horror thriller action thing like Jurassic Park, you need to be able to establish some of those things and understand that, yes, this child may not have the full emotional range that I need them to have to, be an Oscar-worthy actor or whatever, because they're 10 or 11. But every now and again, you get a kid actor that is just so captivating, you can't even put your finger on how or why or whatever. And that is Miss Voiles. She is outstanding in this movie. And when I looked it up to see what else she had been in, I was shocked to find out this is her only IMDb credit. And I mean that. It's not just like, at least at the time of filming this video, if you go and look at her IMDb right now, you're going to see only The Creator. Nothing else is listed. A lot of times actors will have great, like they won't even have posters. They'll have like little things that they've been a part of. They'll list short films, whatever. Nothing from this actor. She has a clean slate outside of The Creator, and boy, am I excited to see what she does in the future to add to that list. Now, the story in its own right is fairly basic, and it's not even a story we haven't seen before. It's definitely a narrative that we followed before in other films and TV shows and whatever. However, the plot and the visuals and the world that Edwards creates for us allows you to feel freshness there. It doesn't feel stale. It doesn't feel predictable even. It feels like a familiar story told in a completely unique way that you haven't experienced before. That's the best way I can describe it. And this film has near perfect use of visual effects and CGI. Everything that you see feels tactile, real, visceral. It feels gritty. It feels lived in. You experience this world in a tangible way as an audience member. And that's crazy. I remember I actually looked over at my buddy at one point during the movie, and I was like, you can feel the shaking from explosions or whatever, like in the seat. And we weren't in a 4DX theater. It was just, I don't know. It was an experience that you don't get every time you go to the movies. And it was really, really cool to see all those things play out in real time and be surprised and be excited and enjoy it as it's happening. Now, here is where this film gets very interesting. The film's budget was $80 million, roughly. Give or take, marketing and all that sort of stuff always plays a factor. But to put that in perspective for you, the Barbie movie had a budget of $145 million. Now, that's not a dig on Barbie. We love Barbie here at the channel. It was a really fun movie. Definitely enjoyed it. But I say that just to give you sort of a scope in terms of this movie's budget that is a sci-fi drama versus, Barbie, which definitely had cool set pieces. And that budget is totally appropriate for a movie like Barbie, I think. You want to put solid actors behind it. You want to get a good director and Greta Gerwig behind it. All those things play a factor for sure. But when you're talking about a sci-fi epic, generally $80 million isn't going to get you very far. But man, oh man, is Edwards a genius in being able to use his budget well. And one of the areas that this movie really uses its budget well is behind the camera. So Greg Fraser was the director of photography for the creator. And if you aren't familiar with any of his credits, you may know Dune or Rogue One, as I already mentioned, or a little film that came out last year called The Batman. And at this point, you're going, why does this even matter, John? It matters because the internet has speculated a lot on this, actually, and to the best of my researching ability, I've come to determine that the reality behind cameras used for this movie is that Fraser actually shot all of the creator on the very camera that I'm using right now to film this video with. Which is preposterous. So that camera is called the Sony FX3. And without getting into the gear, end of things and equipment and all that sort of stuff, it's worth noting that they went with a much more modest camera for this movie than something that they would typically use, like an Arri Alexa LF, because that saves a whole lot of money on equipment rentals. Just to put that in perspective, an Arri Alexa LF costs around $98,000. The Sony FX3 completely kitted out bar lenses, we'll take that out of the equation for now, typically won't cost more than around $10,000. So you're talking about basically a tenth of what they would normally be spending on multiple cameras. And that's exciting because it means that studios are giving good storytellers budget to work with that is reasonable, and also they're picking competent storytellers that are able to get a little scrappy with their equipment, with their actors. This movie doesn't have a ton of A-list actors. It has a couple, yes, but the reality is Fraser and Edwards both knew that to make this movie good, they needed to almost treat it like they were shooting an indie film just with a real feature budget. It's reminding me of Lucas making Star Wars back in the day, the first Star Wars, A New Hope. It's reminding me of Steven Spielberg making Jaws. These are the guys that are legends in Hollywood. They're legends as movie makers, and they've inspired generations after them to make films and tell stories in a way that resonates and connects with audiences through the use of effective visual effects, through the use of working with the cameras that you've got on hand or that you're able to afford with the budget that you have, and working with new actors that are freaking incredible, but don't necessarily have all the accolades that an Oscar-winning, A-lister might have. This film is sort of a culmination of what I've been saying all summer, which is that audiences are ready for original content again. And I think that this movie really takes that and amps it to the next level, because you have movies like Oppenheimer and Barbie, for sure, that are super solid. They are not necessarily attached to big franchises or whatever you want to call it. However, they both definitely had plenty of A-listers. They had plenty of, well-known actors and big name storytellers behind them. This is a movie, the creator is a movie that allows audiences to go into a world that they've never experienced before and connect with a story that a lot of us can connect with on some level. As I mentioned, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I felt that by the end of the movie, it was really effective. My friends and I were like, oh man, like we either liked or didn't like the ending. We enjoyed aspects of the journey along the way, or we didn't care for this as much, but here's why we didn't care for it. None of those reasons that we did or didn't care for it were necessarily attached to the story or the film itself. It was all personal. And I think that that's what movies are missing right now. When you look at, and I'm going to use this as an example because I think that the film is just a disgrace in the fact that it's a waste of money. The Flash, right? It's a mess. It's a mess because Warner Brothers clearly had a hand in every little finite detail. They didn't let Andy Muschietti do what they brought him in there to do. They used an actor who's a predator, and there's a multitude of factors at play here. Sure, we'll go ahead and just admit all those things. But the one thing about that movie that everyone, just the internet as a collective, could not get their heads around was the visual effects. Why did they look so bad in The Flash? What in the world was Warner Brothers doing releasing that movie essentially unfinished? It is crazy to me. And it's not to say that every visual effects shot in that film is terrible. It's not. There are definitely some competent ones. But I encourage you all to go watch Corridor Crew's breakdown on the Flash CGI if you haven't already. And if you don't follow those guys, definitely go subscribe to them too. They're fantastic. They do great work over there. But they have a really good breakdown on this, and also good perspective because they themselves are visual effects artists. But when you hold the Flash up next to Creator, it's night and day. And the Creator has a third of the Flash's budget. Now, I don't know exactly what portions are going to CGI in both of those movies. We could speculate on that all day long. Doesn't matter. The reality is, The Creator is a much more competent film. It's a much more narrative-driven film, and it's a film that is going to resonate with people way more than The Flash. Of course, that's my opinion. It's not, the law. I'm not saying that is factual necessarily. I have a hunch that that's going to be the case. All I'm saying is I think the days of franchising and sequels and all that stuff are really starting to get behind us. Horror has always sort of done this, as a genre. They've always been bringing fresh ideas, new ideas. We have gotten some franchising with like The Conjuring and, even like Halloween and stuff like that. That's been going on since the 70s and 80s for some of those slasher movies. But even like The Conjuring, that's like the most recent one that's been franchised, right? By and large, horror is the only genre that continuously puts out original stuff. Most of the action stuff is tied to, Fast and Furious or Marvel or DC or Star Wars or whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about here. I think that movies like The Creator are going to be making waves. And I think that Edward's use of budget smartly, bringing the right people around him to pull this thing off in a way that is unlike anything that I've seen so far this year, is a masterclass in filmmaking and storytelling and in making things happen. And it's so inspiring to see. It's really, really cool. I think it's also worth mentioning that we have YouTubers now that are making feature movies that are making waves. Like the Philippa brothers with Talk to Me, and even Chris Stuckman and his upcoming movie, Shelby Oaks. Stuff like that is crazy. The fact that just a platform like YouTube can make feature filming accessible to people that have only dreamed about it and would probably only dream about it is really, really wild. It just opens doors in a way that we've never really seen before, but it also is breeding fresh ideas in the space, in the community, and in ways that we just frankly haven't seen yet. So it's exciting. It's exciting to be a film fan right now. It's exciting to be a moviegoer, whether you're a cinephile or whether you are a casual, every now and again go into the movies person. At the end of the day, though, this video is really just a call to action to make you excited about going to see The Creator. It's absolutely worth seeing, and if you haven't already, you should. And if you have already seen it, I want to know what you thought about it. Comment below. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Am I way overhyping this thing? So until next time, don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe, and thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.